Hi, I'm Jim Warner, Food and Nutrition Program Director of Nutrition Services at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Welcome to the premiere episode of Dish on Delish, a brand new cooking show where we are going to dish on some of your favorite foods and show you how to make them delicious and healthier. In today's episode, we're going to be dishing on savory soul food the healthy way. And the dishes we are going to prepare are not your grandmother's soul food recipes. They taste just as good, but our versions will be easy to make, affordable, and heart healthy. Joining me in the kitchen of the Columbus Culinary Institute at the Bradford School, which has trained thousands of culinary specialists across the globe, are a few very special sous chefs. We have Mashika Williams-Roberts, we have Nicole Marsh, who is one of the sous chefs at the Wexner Medical Center, and we have Priscilla Tyson, who's a council member. And today we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with our first dish, which is collard greens. And with the collard greens, I think the first person that's going to help is Mashika. And come on up here to the knife. And what we're going to use for the ingredients for this is we've got a mixture of collard greens and a mixture of kale greens. And what we've done with them is we've actually pre-cooked these for about 10 or 15 minutes. And one of the reasons that we've done this is to get them to the point where they saute very, very quickly. And if you look how bright green they are, we've really retained all the nutrient content in these because we just par cooked these just a little bit. In the old days, when you looked at soul food recipes, you cook greens 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 days, and we're trying to get away from that. So what we're going to do is we have a clove of garlic, and I'm going to show Dr. Roberts how to do this. And what we're doing is we've got the garlic clove. We're going to put it inside of a towel. And the reason it's inside of a towel, go ahead and press down, is that way the garlic doesn't pop all over the place. And so what she's doing is just releasing all of the garlic cloves. We need to press that a little bit harder yet.
Yeah.
Go ahead, like you're mad at it, okay? Smash
There
it down.
we go.
There we go. Okay. So now we've got the garlic cloves that are broken up. And what we'll do with that is just pick 3 or 4 out that you'd like to use. And then I'll show you how to take the skin off the garlic cloves. So we'll go ahead and remove all of this here. Now the best way to take the garlic cloves is you want to put them flat and lay them down on your cutting board and place your knife with the blade facing away from you, because if you're facing it toward you and you press down, there's a good chance the knife could come back at you. And when you're doing these things, you always want to keep in mind that safety first. So you want to hold the knife like this, put your hand on the knife blade, and where the garlic is, just take the heel of your hand and just crack it. And then when you crack it, you're going to go ahead and peel the skin off. Easy enough?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I can do that.
Okay, we have a winner here. And you just want to go ahead and peel those out. Once they're done being smashed, we're going to chop these up and we're going to add these to our onions. And we're going to take these over to the stove and we're going to start cooking our greens. Okay, for this part here, you want to make sure that you hold the knife with your finger facing the blade here like this. And you're going to grab the garlic and you're going to move the knife up and down like this on the garlic, and you're going to keep your knuckles like this. And the reason you're doing that is you don't want to raise the knife blade above your fingers or they will be cut. So you don't have to worry about these being really perfect because they're going to go into the greens and you want that flavor. So let's go ahead and give it a try.
I admit I am not the best at knife skills, but I will try.
Okay, she's doing a great job. And you know, it really doesn't matter how they get chopped, it's a matter of that they get chopped.
And I guess you wouldn't recommend a food processor either?
You could use a food processor, but you want to process them just enough so they're just chopped. If you process them to the point where they're liquid or into a mash, then you know you've cut them too much. And if you can see on the board here, there's very little liquid on the board, which is exactly what we want because we've saved all of the liquid and all of the flavoring in the garlic. So we're going to go ahead and add that garlic to the onions, and we're going to go over here to the stove and we're going to go ahead and start our greens. What we're going to do is put the oil in, and we're going to put this at a medium heat because if we make this too hot, olive oil has a lot of nutrients in it, and if you get it too hot and the olive oil starts to smoke, you're going to lose all those nutrients that are in the olive oil.
Am I measuring?
Go ahead and free pour about a tablespoon. There you go, perfect. We're going to go ahead and bring our onions and our garlic over. And when the oil gets hot, and you can tell when the oil is hot, the oil will start to skitter around on the pan a little bit, and then that's when you're going to add your onions and your garlic. So this isn't quite hot enough yet, and again, we want to use a medium heat. So you can bring your other garlic and onions over here. And we'll grab the hot peppers as well. And the hot peppers, again, we want to add the hot peppers to the hot oil because that'll release the flavor and release the heat that's in the hot peppers. And again, what we're doing is, in the old days, they would add a ham hock or some bacon or a lot of salt to this. What we're doing is adding a lot of flavor to this without having to add, you know, you think of bacon right now, there's a lot of nitrates and a lot of preservatives in bacon, as well as in ham, there's a lot of sodium in the ham. We don't want to do that.
Now, if you wanted meat, could you put like smoked turkey meat or something like that?
You could put smoked turkey meat in there, but I would put it in at the very end, so that way you have the flavor. This is the same thing if you're working with fresh herbs in any kind of a dish. You want to add the fresh herbs very close to the end of when you're making that dish, because if you put it in early, what will happen is the flavor of the herbs and the oil and the herbs will cook away, and you won't have that flavor that you want. Now this is about ready to go, so we're going to go ahead and crank this up a little bit. We're going to add our onions, and when you add the onions, you're going to want to hear that sizzle, which you can hear right away, and that tells you that the pan's hot enough. Our goal here with what we're doing is we want to caramelize the onions. Onions have a lot of natural sugar that's inherent to the onions, and what we're trying to do is bring out that natural sugar and that natural sweetness in the onion and then add to the greens.
When would I put in the pepper?
So once we get these a little bit brown, we're going to go ahead and add the chili peppers to this. And again, I was at another event earlier this week, and there was a pot of greens that was on the back burner. I just happened to open up the lid and look in there, and it must have been going for weeks, because the greens didn't look like this bright, vibrant green. They looked like a military uniform. They were there. They'd been there for so long. They looked like Nicole's hat, as a matter of fact. So we want to keep in mind that you want to keep these as bright as you possibly can to save all the nutrients, as well as the fiber. Because any of us over 50, you certainly understand the importance of fiber in your life.
That's right.
That's right.
Exactly
I know
right.
I do. Okay. So the onions are going here at a pretty good pace. We're going to crank this up a little bit so we can get some brown to this. Now, can you smell the sweetness of the onions coming across? And that's something that you want to smell right away, is that sweetness. If you smell kind of a charred flavor or burnt flavor, then you know you've got the olive oil too hot. So our onions are starting to brown. We're going to go ahead and add some of our chili peppers. And for those of you who are very sensitive to chili peppers, hopefully we won't start to choke you out when we do these, but these are starting to saute and they look great.
How much would you add?
I added about a teaspoon of chili peppers for the amount that we have here. What we'll do next is we're going to go ahead and add a couple of handfuls of greens to this pot. Go ahead.
Now, when you said you pre-cooked these, how did you cook them?
Well, what I did with these is I put these into a kind of a large pot of water and cooked these for about 15 minutes, and then I strained them. And after I strained them, I shocked them with cold water. And what that does is, when you shock them with cold water, is it stops the cooking process and it retains all the nutrients in the kale and then with the collard greens.
Now, I noticed we didn't put any salt in there.
No salt in this at all. And we're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper toward the end of this. But right now, we're just allowing this to saute. And the reason that we're allowing this to saute is we want to bring out some of the natural sugars as well in with the kale and with the collard greens. We have a mixture, and the salt that I like to use is a kosher salt that's mixed with a very large grind black pepper. And the reason I like to use that is I use the pepper as a marker, and that pretty much tells me how much salt I've put in there. A lot of people will tend to use that blue tube of salt, the little girl with the umbrella on it, which is all fine and dandy, but you really don't know how much salt you're putting in there. I can't tell you how many times I've seen cooks grab that tube of salt and go like this, and they have no idea how much salt they're putting in here. When you're doing it this way, you know exactly how much salt. So what you're going to want to do is put in 2 pinches of salt. And she's got very small fingers, so her pinches aren't the same as mine. So make it 3. Okay, so the greens are about done, and if we want to get a really good camera shot of what the greens look like, we're going to go ahead and turn off the fire. And if you want to bring the camera here, these are what the greens look like. And to finish these off, we're going to add about an ounce of red wine vinegar. The recipe calls for cider vinegar, but you can use pretty much any kind of vinegar you like with this. So we're going to go ahead and add the vinegar to this.
An ounce.
An ounce, so that's about 17 shakes.
Okay, I think I have 2 more to go. Okay, there you go. One more for extra.
Okay, one more for extra. And if you look at this, and it smells wonderful, and I'll put some of this out here onto a plate. I actually put this out here onto a spoon. And see what we have here. We've got these beautiful looking greens. And with the heat that's in the pan, we're gonna add the spinach because there's so much heat in here, we really don't need to cook the spinach. We're gonna add about 2 cups of the raw spinach. Then we're gonna mix that up a little bit. And then we've got our 3 different types of greens in one pot. And this is ready to go. Now this recipe really makes probably about 4 or 5 portions when it's all said and done because it's so good you're going to continue to eat this. This is one of those things that you can eat and eat and eat and it's not really going to, it's not like you're eating French fries or eating a hamburger. This is really going to add to your health. So we're going to let that go and the spinach is starting to wilt a little bit, which is what we want.
I've never had greens with spinach in it. That's a new one for me.
Well, this is a new recipe. These are the new days. This is the new age of soul food. You can tell, if we can get another camera shot here of the spinach, you can't even tell there's any spinach in there. The spinach is really cooked into the greens quite a bit. And what we're doing is we're using what they call carryover heat because there's enough heat in this pan. And what we did with the spinach cooks so quickly, we just took that spinach, added it right there, and then the heat that was already in the pan cooked the spinach. And another benefit that you'll see here, because we pre-cooked this in advance, there's very little moisture that's in here. We cooked out very little bit of the moisture in here, so we have all this flavor ready to go. So we're gonna go ahead and, now for the next recipe we have, it's called a good for you mac and cheese, okay? And when you think mac and cheese, you normally think good for you. You think good for your thighs, okay? Not necessarily good for you. So what we're using today is we're using a whole wheat pasta. We've got some non-fat Greek yogurt, which is really kind of unusual. We're gonna top this with some Parmesan cheese. We're using skim milk. The cheese that we're using today is a 4-cheese Mexican mix. This is already grated. And you know, when you're cooking, you wanna do things that are quick and easy to make. The one surprise element that we have in this recipe is we have pureed butternut squash that we're going to add to this. And the pureed butternut squash is going to add some fiber. It's going to add a ton of vitamins to this particular dish as well. And it's going to, this is one of those stealth health ingredients that we talk about that nobody will really know. And this will give the macaroni and cheese the look that you expect when you buy a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese, that kind of unnatural color of orange. So you feel like you're eating at home. And then we're gonna finish that off with a little bit of butter. So we're gonna take a walk over here and Councilmember Tyson is going to prepare the good for you mac and cheese. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna do with this particular recipe here is we're gonna add the butternut squash, the milk, and the yogurt in this pan here, okay? So you're gonna go ahead and add all your entire batch of the butternut squash.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna add our butternut squash. You're gonna add the milk, butter, and yogurt. And that's about 3 tablespoons of yogurt.
Okay.
So you've got your milk.
Thank you. How much milk?
All the milk.
No.
You've got a piece of butter here, and you've got about 3 tablespoons of yogurt.
Okay.
And as a highly trained professional sous chef, I know that you know how much 3 tablespoons actually is, okay?
Okay, I have yogurt.
Yogurt, so you're gonna go ahead, and it's okay if you mix those two. We're not gonna worry about that.
You said 3 tablespoons?
3 tablespoons. There's some awful big tablespoons.
No,
Oh
that's
my
almost done.
They look great.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put this back on the fire, and we're gonna mix this up really, really well. And you can use the wire whip.
Yeah.
And we're using the wire whip for a couple of different reasons. The wire whip will help blend all the ingredients together.
Put it back on the front.
You can put that on the fire, and we're going to bring this to a low boil. So when this comes to a low boil, which should happen fairly quickly, we're going to start adding the cheese to this slowly and incorporating the cheese. If we put all of the cheese in there at one time, the cheese would tend to blot up and it would be difficult for it to melt. So we're just going to add just small handfuls of cheese at a time to this particular dish.
It's almost. It's good. Hot over here.
Okay.
Starting to
Okay,
on the sides a
so
little
when this
bit.
starts simmering on the sides,
just
go ahead and
starting.
start stirring that, and then if you want to, do you want to go ahead and start adding the cheese?
Okay.
So if you come over here, are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm left-handed.
You're a
Oh,
lefty,
it's hot.
and you guys better
Yeah, I gotta
switch.
be over
Okay.
here.
You're a lefty, so go ahead and start adding the cheese and
It's hot
allow
over here. The mashika, this is like.
Councilmember Tyson to completely incorporate that cheese before we add the next batch of cheese.
Okay.
And that looks good. And if you look at this, and if you can see this from the camera angle, this looks just like Kraft mac and cheese due to the color of the butternut squash, as well as the fact that we've used some of the orange cheeses. Have almost the remainder of the cheese. I'll just go ahead and add the rest of it. And then stir that up really, really well.
Okay. Perfect. Here we go.
Okay, and we have our cheese sauce ready to go.
Okay, ready?
And we're gonna go ahead and bring our cheese sauce.
Okay.
And now what we're going to do is Councilmember Tyson is going to make this healthy mac and cheese dish. So what you're going to do is you want to mix this in your pot as opposed to trying to mix this in the pan that you're going to bake in. The reason for that is if you actually come up over the side of the pot, it's not a big deal. If you put it in here and try to mix it and you go over the sides of the pan, when you bake it, it's going to burn. And it's not going to look nearly as nice as it would otherwise. So we're going to go ahead and start slowly adding the mac and cheese, or the macaroni to that. And then as you do that, you're going to fold that in gently.
Is this, want to put all of it in?
Yep.
Okay.
This has been pre-measured, but don't do it all at one time because
it
you
won't
want
be able to
to
coat
get
it.
an even distribution of the flavor and an even distribution of the cheese sauce that you spent so much time making.
This is great.
So the butternut squash is for the color as well as for moisture?
It actually adds some color, it adds a ton of vitamins, and it adds some flavor to the cheese sauce as well.
Sneak vegetables into mac
And again,
cheese.
this is part of that stealth health thing, and where we're adding vegetables, and people really wouldn't know that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt and pepper to that. Go ahead and add the remainder.
Right. All right. Perfect.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and mix that all together.
Questions?
Then one trick that we're going to do today to keep this from sticking, we're going to use some olive oil Pam spray. We're going to spray this pan a little bit. This allows the macaroni and cheese to come off the pan a little bit easier. You go ahead and put that in. And then after you put that in, you're going to go ahead and top it with the Parmesan cheese.
Okay, quick question.
And if you look at what Councilmember Tyson is doing here, she's taking this. A quick way to do this to make it level is put that down on your pan. You got to watch out for that splash a little bit because that. I'm sorry. Did I get your jacket? Okay. That's my jacket, so it's okay. So
How much of this are we going to put on?
you're going to go sprinkle this so it's get a
All of
nice
it?
even distribution.
Yes. So this,
Sprinkle that on.
and this is an 8x8 pan, correct?
This is an 8x8 pan, and this pan was just a couple of dollars. There's no reason to get an expensive pan at the store. This was about $5. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this over to the oven,
Completely cover it.
and that looks beautiful, just like it is.
Okay.
And if you wanted to, doctor this up a little bit as well, you could put some of the panko breadcrumbs on here. If you wanted to add some crunch to the top of this, but we're going to cook this as the recipe calls for today. We're going to go ahead and put that in the oven, 20 minutes in the oven. Okay, so we've got our mac and cheese, we have our greens. The next ingredient that we're going to work with is the chicken tenders, okay? And this is something that, it's a recipe that I've been using for a number of years. And the ingredients that we have today with the chicken tenders is we're using a couple of different things that you may not have used before. We're using panko breadcrumbs, okay? And panko breadcrumbs give you the mouthfeel or the impression that the food has been deep fried. Panko breadcrumbs are the breadcrumbs where the breadcrumbs are ground and then baked. So that's what leaves them crunchy. with panko, you kind of start with a blank slate, and when you add the olive oil to this with our chicken tenders, it really adds a nice touch. So we've got our panko, and what we soaked the chicken in is we used some buttermilk, and we used a 1% buttermilk, so it's 1% fat buttermilk, so it is a low fat. And the reason that we use the buttermilk, it actually tenderizes the chicken, and it also adds moisture to the chicken. So we soak this usually 4 hours. You can soak this overnight. Anything beyond that, there's enough acidity in the buttermilk that you kind of want to stay away from that. So we're going to go ahead and open this, and we have a colander over there.
Did you substitute the chicken for another meat?
You could use fish, you could use a thinly sliced pork loin or pork tenderloin. You could use a chicken breast that you could cut into thinner strips. The thing with the recipe and the fact that we're using the panko breadcrumbs, you want to make sure that the cooking time is very limited when you're cooking this, because the breadcrumbs will brown before the item is cooked, and the chicken or whatever the meal is should be pretty much all muscle and very little fat. And the reason for that is if something has a lot of fat in it, it's usually a muscle that helps propel the animal. Either the legs or the thighs. What we're looking for is, when we use the word tenderloin, that comes from the center of the animal. And by using the term tenderloin, that should tell you that it is tender and ready to go. And by dipping this into the oil, the buttermilk, we're going to make this more tender. Okay.
And that was buttermilk, and it was mixed with hot sauce and the...
Yes. So what Priscilla's going to do is take one of these chicken breasts, and we're going to bring these out, and you're going to tap them on the side of the bowl, and then you're going to put them in here.
Okay.
And then you're going to hand these over to Mashika. Okay, so put that in the breadcrumbs, and what you'll do is you're going to use this hand to bring them over to the breadcrumbs, and you're going to use this hand to put them in, to smash the breadcrumbs onto the chicken. So take this hand here. I know this is kind of confusing. That hand brings them wet to dry. This hand is dry to dry. Okay, so now go ahead and coat that. And what you want to do is, when you're coating that, really press down hard on that, and sprinkle some breadcrumbs on top of that.
And then done with it. Okay.
Don't be shy.
Right?
Don't be shy about these breadcrumbs. We got plenty of breadcrumbs. Okay, so now that you have all three breadcrumbs ready to go, or all three chickens dusted in the breadcrumbs, we'll just leave that one go.
All right.
Okay,
Perfect.
and
Press
right
it
now we
down.
have about a 4-ounce portion, which is the portion that is what we need for protein. So what you do is, with each chicken tender that you have here, take the palm of your hand, your dry hand, and put the breadcrumbs over there, and then just really smash down on it really tightly. And the reason we're doing that is we are going to make sure that the breadcrumbs really adhere to the chicken tender. And if not, what happens is, when you try to bake them, the moisture and the steam from the buttermilk actually takes the breadcrumbs off of the chicken, and that's not what you want. You really want these to adhere. So we've got Mashika with the olive oil. So what we're going to do is take these with your dry hand.
This is a dry hand.
That's dry, and put these on the cutting board.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and you'll spray both sides with the Pam olive oil spray. And don't be shy about that, because you really want these to be crispy.
So this is helping it cook.
And this will help cook as well. And what this does, this makes it crispy, and it also helps it cook, is because when you have heat, the oil picks up the heat almost right away. The heat kind of replaces the sodium in the chicken, and that's one of the things that we're doing. Again, it's that stealth health piece where we're adding heat to that, and we're adding some of the hot sauce, and that really changes the flavor profile, and people think that, boy, this is really hot, it's got to be salty, it's got to be, have a lot of other things in it. And the panko breadcrumbs make it feel like it's deep fried. So again, this is, we're looking at soul food in a much healthier fashion of the way people eat today. Having said that, we're going to invite Dr. Teresa Long up to try these foods.
Wow, I get to try.
Yes, you do. Okay, we've got Nicole is going to bring a tray over for you.
Am I the only one who gets to eat?
Yes, you are. But the rest of us can eat the remainder of the
kidding.
foods that we have back here, okay?
Wow.
So Mashika's going to put the greens on the table
Okay,
here.
so now you're going to get a lesson in plating.
We're going to
beautiful
plate
food.
this. And what we're trying to do when we plate the ingredients is we want to make sure that we alternate the colors on the plate. And if you notice what we're using here, I think that's plenty, that's about 3 ounces. We're alternating the colors, and we're also using a square plate, a square platter. When you eat, you should really make eating a celebration, because you know so many people go through life and they eat because it's just one more thing that they have to do during the day. And if you look at food as a celebration of life, as that you're celebrating Mother Earth, it's going to be better for you. You're going to taste the food. You're going to slow down a little bit. Maybe even have a conversation with the person across the table from you. Who knows what may happen? Okay.
Wow, that's a great idea. Make it a celebration, whether it's coming from the garden or a grocery store. It can be beautiful and healthy.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Okay, so we have our mac and cheese is coming over here. Since Councilmember Tyson did this, we're going to go ahead and put our mac and cheese right over here.
Okay.
And then we need our mustard sauce.
Really good.
Wow.
Wait till you taste this.
Okay, so we're gonna go. So we have our mac and cheese,
love that.
and what we have for the sauce here today is a dipping sauce. A lot of people like to use either ranch dressing or sour cream or whatever to dip their chicken tenders in. We're using a mixture of, it's a honey mustard sauce, and it has 0 fat, just a little bit of sodium, 0 carbs, 0 sugars, and 0 protein. All this is added is flavor to the chicken tenders. So you really need to think about the whole plate. And what I like to do is stock my refrigerator full of things that are really flavorful. So if I have nothing else to make, I always have something in my fridge that adds a lot of flavor to it. This is it's great. It's a little bit spicy. So we're going to add that right here. Okay, and then we have our baked chicken tenders. And if you look at the chicken tenders and you look at the parchment paper, we cook these at a little higher temperature. We cook these at 400 degrees. And one of the reasons that we did that is because the tender pieces of meat, whether it's a loin cut, has very little connective tissue, has very little fat. So we want to cook it at a higher temperature because it's going to cook faster, and there's no other moisture that's going to add back to the meat to give it any sort of moisture. And if you wanted to add some paprika to the mix, you could do that as well. So we're going to put this right here. And you've got a nice well-rounded plate. You've got about 4 ounces of protein, 4 ounces of vegetables, and about 4 ounces of the starch, which again has quite a bit of protein.
So let me just ask a question. So this is actually 4 ounces altogether?
Each chicken tenderloin is about 1.5 ounces.
Okay, because I was thinking each one was 4 ounces. So
No. And when they cook down, they're going to cook down to about an ounce, ounce and a quarter. And you have about 3 of those on there.
So my goodness, I'm starting with the chicken.
And then when you think of cooking, when you're doing this as part of the end of your day, you've had a rough day at the office, you get home, you think of cooking. Cooking is the only thing that you do that requires all 5 of your senses. And as you leave today, I really want you to think about that and how this really can impact your life and how you change how you look at food. And food shouldn't be one of those things where you pull up to a drive-up window, eat, and then go to your next task. So we want to thank everybody for coming out today. We really like to thank the Columbus Culinary Institute here at the Bradford School today, Dan Reese, our sponsors, Columbus Public Health, the Ross Heart Hospital, and enjoy your food.
Thank you, Chef. Thank you, Chef Jim, for sharing this recipe.
Hope to see you next time.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Great.